Let's practice finding unit rates. Ashley is preparing for a horse riding competition. She has trained her horse for 5 hours and has completed 250 rounds. At what rate has Ashley ridden her horse in rounds per hour? Okay, so we're going to be looking at unit rates. Remember, when you look at a unit rate always means out of 1. So when you're thinking about this, remember, unit comes from unit, which means 1. So we're always going to be looking out of 1. Okay, so Ashley is riding her horse for 5 hours. So I'm going to write that down, 5 hours. And she completed 250 rounds. We want to figure out the unit rate. Okay, so remember that unit rate, we're going to be looking at something out of time is what we're looking at, okay? In this situation, hours is related to time. So if we're looking at the unit rate of rounds per hour, then that means we're going to have rounds per hour. Usually your problem tells you how they want you to set it up. So 250 rounds per 5 hours is our rate, but that's not our unit rate. We want to find for 1 hour. So if I want to find for 1 hour, I'm going to go from 5 to 1 through a division of 5. If I'm dividing hours by 5, because I'm trying to find for 1 hour, then that also means I have to divide 250 by 5. 250 divided by 5, well, 25 divided by 5 is 5. So 250 divided by 5 is 50. So when I'm finding the unit rate, when I'm finding for 1 hour, I found that she rode 50 rounds for every hour, or per hour, 50 rounds per hour. There's one example of finding a unit rate. Use the table that is shown to determine the number of cakes Stella baked with respect to time. All right, so we're going to look at a table, and we're knowing that Stella was baking, and she was baking cakes, and she was doing so over the course of hours. So I made sure to separate cakes from time. Okay, remember that it's important to keep your units straight with your integers. So if I read this table is telling me that for every 3 cakes, it takes her 2 hours. So for 6 cakes, it takes her 4 hours, and 9 cakes, it takes her 6 hours. If that's true, and we want to find the unit rate, remember, we're always looking at it related to time. So we want to figure out how many cakes she could bake in a unit, which means 1 hour of time. So if I'm going to solve for finding a unit or 1 hour, I have to use the table to help me. Well, I could use 6 hours, but I also could use 2, since 2 is closer to 1 and 2 is double what 1 is. So if I took 2 and I said I want to make it become 1, that's a division of 2. So I'm going to divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. If that's the case, I also have to half the number of cakes that I'm making. So I have to take 3 and divide it by 2. If you're thinking of money, remember we always look at money. It's the easiest way to do it in your head. $3 cut in half, $1.50. So if we're looking at time, it's the same thing, 1.5. The only difference is it's not $1.50 because it's not money, it's time. So you've got 1 1/2 cakes. 1 1/2 cakes. That should make sense, because now that I have my unit rate, I can always figure out for any number of hours. If I didn't have an even number of hours, and let's say I had, I don't know, 9 hours, I could solve for that. Because now that I know what 1 is for 1 hour, that's 1.5 cakes, I'm just going to simply multiply by 9. I would multiply my hours by 9, and I'd multiply the number of cakes by 9. Now, you and I both know that you can't just do a half of a cake. But when we're looking at unit rates, this is helpful to be able to find so that we can kind of estimate how long things would take if we were going to do something for a longer period of time. So, unit rate, always out of 1. Remember, unit means 1.